We continue now at the top of Daf Bezim and Bezim Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf Tube. The Gemara continues, Inami or Sados Bakesef Yiknu. The Pasuk says that the fields are acquired with money. It uses the language of Yiknu. And again, that's how you see by fields we use the language of Kinyan. And likewise, when it comes to the Kiddushin, we're going to use the language of Kinyan. That's why our Mishnah says, Ha'isha Niknis, Tani Ha'isha Niknis. That's why it says in our Mishnah, Ha'isha Niknis. But the Gemara says, V'nisni Hasam Ha'ish Kona. But why not say over there in the second parak, why does it say Ha'ish Mekadesh? Why not say Ha'ish Kona? You should use the same language over there that you use over here. And the Gemara says, Meikara Tani Lishna Doraisa. Originally, meaning in the first parak, we used the language of the Torah, the language of Kinyan. Ulavasof, but then in the second parak, Tani Lishna Derabanan, we use the language of the Rabbanan. Umay Lishna Derabanan, what is this language of the Rabbanan? Why did we use the language of Kiddushin? Do'asarla Kuli Alma Kehektish. The idea is that he's prohibiting her on everyone else, just like Hektish is prohibited. And the Gemara says, V'nisni hacha ha'ish kona. But why not over here, instead of saying ha'isha niknis, why not say ha'ish kona? Instead of saying the woman is acquired, say the man acquires. And to that the Gemara says, Mishum takaboy lemisni seifa, v'kones atzma. Since at the end of the Mishnah it's going to say how she acquires herself, bidida, so it's talking about her, tananami reisha bidida. Therefore, the beginning of the Mishnah also we reference her, and we say ha'isha niknis, the woman is acquired. V'nisni ha'ish kona umakna, but why not instead say the man acquires? Umakna would mean that he gives herself over, he gives her to herself. As Rashi says, umakna usal liatzma b'shtei derachim. There are two ways where he's makna her to herself. Then you could formulate the Mishnah using the man. And the Gemara answers to that, mishum de'ika misas habal, because one of the ways she acquires herself is when the husband dies. Delav iu kamakni. In that case, he's not being makna her to herself. He just died. Min shemayihu demakni lots, from the heavens that he's acquiring her, that he's allowing her to acquire herself, so to speak. And that's why we don't use the language of ha'ish kona umakna. V'ba yisayman, if you want, I could say another answer. Itana kona, if we had the language of kona, that the man is kona the wife, hava aminu afilu bal karcha, then I would think it could even be against her will. Tana ha'isha niknis, therefore it says that the wife is acquired to midaita in, shalom midaita lo, that it has to be willingly, and it cannot be against her will. And the Gemara continues, Umay irya detani shalosh lisni shlosha. Why is it that we use the language of shalosh derachim, which is a lashon nekeva? Why not use shlosha, which is a lashon zachar? And the Gemara says to that, Mishum dekaboy lemisni derech. The reason is because we're using the word derech. We're talking about derachim. V'derech lashon nekevahu, and the word derech is actually a lashon nekeva. Tichsiv, like it says, v'hodato lohem es haderech yelchu ba. It says you let them know the way that they should walk, the path they should take, and it uses the word ba, which shows that derech is the feminine. Tanya, but that which we learned in a brisa, b'shiva derachim bodkin es hazav, it talks about the 7 ways to inspect the zav. So there also nisni sheva. If it's the language of nekeva, so we should have sheva. It shouldn't say shiva. And the Gemara says to that, Mishum dekaboy lemisni derech, v'yeshkechon derech dikri lashon zachar, because there it's using the word derech, and sometimes the word derech is actually lashon zachar. Tichsiv b'derech echad yetzu elecha, uv'shiva derachim yanusu lefanecha. It says that in one way they will go out to you, and 7 ways they'll run away from you. And so you see over there it's a lashon of zachar. It's used in the masculine. And so the Gemara then says, if so, kashu kroya adadi v'kashanami masnisana adadi. We have a contradiction in Psukim in terms of whether derech is lashon zachar or lashon nekeva, and we also have a contradiction in Mishnayos in terms of whether derech is lashon zachar or lashon nekeva. This Tanya, which was quoted earlier, it's actually a Mishnah. The Mesoras Hashas changes it to the Tanan. It's a Mishnah in Zavin. Again, the Mishnah in Zavin seems to say it's a lashon zachar, and our Mishnah seems to say that derech is a lashon nekeva. And Rashi explains bod kimes hazav. Again, this is the Mishnah in Zavin. There are 7 ways that we check the zav. What that means is b'maichol uv'mishta b'choli b'masa b'kfitza u'mara v'hir. You're checking 7 things. Shema machmas echad mehen ra. Maybe the reason why the zav saw a flow was because of one of these reasons. He ate, he drank something, he got sick, etc. V'onosu, and therefore it's considered an ones. V'tar, and the zav would actually be tar. The zav is only tameh if the discharge is not ba'ones. So that's why we're checking 7 different ways that it might have happened ba'ones. The Rachmana Amar mi-besaro me'ela v'lo machmas ones. It says in the pasuk mi-besaro me'elav, and not because of an ones. Va'isha ba'ones nami metama. Now by a woman it's different. By a zava she's tamei even if it's ba'ones. K'damar b'perek menos kusim, like we say in Meseches Nida. Kishomer kiyazav zov dama hare ones amar. When it says in the pasuk kiyazav zov dama, that includes ones. So that is one of the differences between the zav and the zava. And the Gemara continues and answers the contradictions. Kroy hadadi lo kashan, the contradiction in Psukim is not difficult. Hacha over here, the Torah kai, where we're talking about Torah, the pasuk says v'hodato lahem es haderech yelchu ba, and it uses a lashon nekeva. V'Torah ikri lashon nekeva. Torah is called by lashon nekeva. T'chsiv Torah es Hashem tamima meshivas nafesh. It says Torah es Hashem tamima meshivas nafesh. It uses a lashon nekeva. So therefore, kasav la b'lashon nekeva. That's why the pasuk uses a lashon nekeva. V'hodato lahem es haderech yelchu ba, using the word ba lashon nekeva because we're talking about Torah. But over there in the pasuk of b'derech echad yetzu eilechu v'shiva derachim yanusu lefanecha tevim milchama kai, it's talking about war. The darko shel ish lasos milchama, it's the way of a man to conduct war. Vein darka shel ish lasos milchama, it's not the way of a woman to conduct war. So kasav la b'lashon zachar. That's why it says it in a language of zachar. And masnisin hadadi lo kashan, it's also not difficult. The contradiction in Mishnayis hacha de legabe isha kai, over here we're talking about ha'isha niknis, the woman is acquired in terms of Kiddushin. We're talking about the isha katani la b'lashon nekeva. Therefore, we learn it in a lashon nekeva. Hasam over there by the zav, the legabe ish kai, we're talking about a man specifically, as Rashi just said. We're talking about a zav and not a zava. The darko shel ish li bodek vein darko shel isha li bodek. It's the way of a man that we do this bedika to make sure it wasn't ba'ones. We don't do that by a woman. To ha'isha nami ba'ones metama, because a woman is tamei even ba'ones, as Rashi said. So therefore, since we're talking about a man, tani lashon zachar. Therefore, we have a language, a lashon of zachar. And the Gemara continues, my time matani shalosh mishum derachim. But why do we have the word shalosh? Because of the word derachim. In other words, the word derachim is considered to be nekeva over here, and therefore we use shalosh. Nisni devarim v'nisni shlosha. Why not instead say the word devarim, and then we could use the word shlosha? And the Gemara says to that, mishum dekaboy lemisni bia. The reason is because one of the items listed in the Mishnah, one of the kinyanim listed in the Mishnah is bia, the act of relations. Ubia ikri derech, and we find that the word bia is referred to as derech. Techsiv, as it's written in the pasuk, v'derech gever bialma kein derech isha min ha'afes, that the way of the man with the young girl, so is the way of the woman who's an adulteress. You see, it's talking about an act of relations, and it uses the word derech. And the Gemara says, Hateinach bia, that's good in terms of bia. Kesef ushtar meikel amemra. What are you going to say by kesef and shtar? There are other kinyanim that are listed in the Mishnah. And the Gemara answers to that, mishum bia, but it's because bia is in the list. And so therefore we want to use the word derech. And the Gemara says, "V'tani tarti atuchada." Would we then teach one word referencing two things just because of one, meaning to say bia is just one in a list of three items, and therefore that should decide the language that we use? And the Gemara says to that, Hanoch nami tzorech bia ninu. Even kesef and shtar, they really all are at tzorech bia. It's all leading to this relationship of marriage that they will have. Ultimately, there will be acts of relations, and so therefore it is all related to the act of bia, and that's why we use the word derech. And the Gemara continues, V'bayisem, if you want, I could say another answer. Hamani Rabbi Shimoni, who's the author of our Mishnah? It's Rabbi Shimon. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brayso, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Mipnei ma amra Torah, ki yikach ish isha. Why does the Torah say that a man takes a woman? V'lo chasav, and it doesn't say ki silkach isha le'ish. It doesn't say that a woman is taken by a man. Mipnei shedarko shalish lechazer alisha. The reason is it's the way of a man to pursue a woman. Vein darko shalisha lechazer alish, and it's not the way of a woman to pursue a man. Mashal lo adam she'avda lo aved. It's comparable to a person who loses an object. Mi chozer al mi, who's looking for who? Ba'al aveda mechazer al aveda. So it's the Ba'al Aveda looking for what he lost, and therefore that's why it says Kigach ish isha. It's the man that is pursuing the woman, and that is referred to as the Darko Shalish. So therefore it's appropriate to use the word derech. And Rashi explains, Hamani detani lashon derech. Who is the author of our Mishnah who uses the language of derech b'kiddusha isha when it comes to the kiddushin of a woman? Rabbi Shimon here. It's Rabbi Shimon. Diamar urcha diara shayach, but he says that's the derech eretz in terms of the way a man pursues a woman. Aveda, why is it considered his lost object? Achas mitzalosav. Rashi says that refers to one from his ribs, meaning the woman was taken from his side. That's why it's referred to as a lost object, referring to the story of Adam and Chava. And the Gemara continues, that which we learned in the Mishnah in 7 ways we check the zav. The Gemara asks the same question, listen, devarim, why not use the word devarim over there? Why use the word derachim? And the Gemara says, Hasam over there, Hakamashmalan, it's teaching us the Darka de Mechli Yisera, that the way is that if a person eats too much, Lasuya li de Ziva, that brings a person to Ziva. Vidarchel de Mishtiya Yisera, and also if a person drinks too much, Lasuya li de Ziva, that brings a person to Ziva. And the Gemara continues, V'hadetanan, what about that which we learned in the Mishnah, Esrog Shavel Ilan Begimel Derachim? It says that an Esrog is like a tree in 3 ways. Listening Devarim, again, why say Derachim and not Devarim? And the Gemara says to that, Mishum D'Ba'inan Misni Sefer, because we want to learn at the end of that Mishnah, Uli Yerek B'derech Echad, to a Yerek in one way, that an Esrog is comparable to a Yerek in one way, and there we use the word Derech, so that's why we use the word Derachim as well in the beginning of that Mishnah. But the Gemara asks, Seifanami Nisni Davar, but at the end also, instead of saying Derech Echad, why not use the word Davar? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph.